Before we begin today's story, let us know in the comments section what time and part of the world you are listening from. Also, if you enjoy today's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin. The Spring Festival transformed Winchester Park into a kaleidoscope of colors and sensations. Cherry blossoms danced on the breeze, their delicate petals creating nature's confetti against the cloudless April sky. The air hummed with an intoxicating blend of live music, children's laughter, and the sweet aroma of festival treats wafting from dozens of local vendor stalls. Julia Reyes stood behind her booth, Sweet Dreams Bakery, carefully arranging her signature lavender macarons. At 34, she wore her success like a comfortable sweater, modest but warm. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, a few stubborn strands escaping to frame her face, bearing the slight signs of flour despite her best efforts to stay presentable. "Mommy, look, that balloon dragon is bigger than our house." Emmy's voice cut through the festival's symphony, her 8-year-old enthusiasm impossible to contain. She tugged at Julia's apron, brown eyes wide with wonder. Julia smiled, her heart swelling at her daughter's joy. Emmy was her mirror image, same chocolate eyes, same dimpled smile, same untamable curls. But where Julia had learned caution, Emmy rushed headlong into adventure. "Just a minute, sweetheart. Let me finish setting up these displays." Julia turned back to her work, muscle memory guiding her hands as her mind drifted to another spring festival 12 years ago. Back then, she'd been the one bouncing with excitement, dreaming of forever with a boy who could sketch entire worlds on napkins. The memory stung, even now. In her momentary distraction, Julia failed to notice Emmy's attention wandering toward the balloon artist. When she looked down again, her daughter had vanished. The realization hit like ice water in her veins. "Emmy?" Julia's voice barely carried over the crowd. She scanned the sea of faces, panic rising with each passing second. "Emmy!" Abandoning her booth, Julia pushed through the crowd, her heart thundering against her ribs. Every parent's nightmare played out in Technicolor in her mind. The festival suddenly seemed too big, too loud, too dangerous. Meanwhile, a few stalls away, Emmy had realized her mistake. The balloon dragon that had seemed so magical now loomed menacingly above her, and unfamiliar faces pressed in from all sides. Tears welled up in her eyes as she spun in circles, trying to spot her mother's familiar blue apron. She backed up, hiccuping little sobs, until she collided with something solid. Strong hands steadied her shoulders, preventing her fall. Emmy looked up and up, into kind eyes the color of warm honey. "Whoa there, careful," the tall stranger said, crouching down to her level. His voice was deep but gentle, like the way her mom read bedtime stories. "Are you lost?" Emmy nodded, sniffling. "I can't find my mommy." "That's scary," he said, understanding in his tone. "I'm Nathan. Want to team up and find her together?" Something about his calm presence made Emmy feel safe. She nodded again, accepting his offered hand. Nathan Cole hadn't planned on playing hero at the Spring Festival. He'd come to meet with city planners about a new development project, his crisp button-down and rolled sleeves marking him as someone who belonged in boardrooms rather than fairgrounds. But something about this little girl's distress touched a place in his heart he thought he'd walled off years ago. "What's your mom's name?" he asked as they walked, keeping his pace slow to match Emmy's shorter steps. "Julia. She makes the best cookies in the whole world." Nathan's step faltered, just slightly. The name hit him like a physical blow, stirring up memories he'd buried under years of architectural drawings and corporate success. But surely it couldn't be. "Does your mom have a bakery stall here?" Emmy's face lit up. "Yes, Sweet Dreams Bakery. Mom says dreams taste like sugar and sunshine." Nathan's heart clenched. He remembered a young woman saying those exact words, scribbled in the margins of his sketchbook, next to plans for a bakery they designed together. Before ambition and fear had driven him to choose a different path. They found Julia near the festival's central fountain, her face pale with worry as she called Emmy's name. The moment she spotted her daughter, relief flooded her features. "Emmy!" Julia rushed forward, then stopped dead in her tracks as her gaze traveled up to Emmy's companion. Time seemed to freeze. The festival faded to background noise as Julia and Nathan stared at each other, 12 years of history crackling in the space between them. Julia looked different, more elegant, more grounded, but her eyes still held that same sparkle that had once inspired Nathan to design entire cities around her dreams. Nathan had grown into his features, the boyish charm replaced by distinguished confidence, but his smile still crooked slightly to the left when he was nervous. "Nathan?" Julia's voice barely carried above a whisper. "Hello, Julia." His response was equally soft, laden with unspoken words. Emmy looked between them, confused by the sudden tension. "You know each other?" Julia swallowed hard, professional courtesy warring with old hurt. We used to, a long time ago." Nathan's hand slipped into his pockets, a gesture Julia remembered from their youth, when he was trying to appear casual despite his nerves. "Thank you for finding her," Julia managed, pulling Emmy close. "Of course." Nathan's eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "She has your smile." The simple observation carried weight, reminding them both of late-night conversations about future children, dreams sketched in the margins of possibility. Dreams that had shattered the day Nathan chose a prestigious internship across the country over their small-town plans. "I should get back to my booth," Julia said, breaking the spell. "The festival crowd will be wanting their sugar fix." "Still baking dreams?" The question slipped out before Nathan could stop it, heavy with remembrance. Julia's expression flickered. Surprise, pain, something softer. "Someone has to." As she turned to leave, Emmy waved goodbye to Nathan. "Thank you for helping me." Nathan waved back, watching them disappear into the crowd. He stood there long after they'd gone, remembering a younger version of himself who had once believed career success would fill the Julia-shaped hole in his heart. The spring breeze carried the scent of lavender macarons, Julia's signature recipe. Some things, it seemed, remained constant even when everything else changed. Running into Julia had not been part of Nathan's carefully structured plans for this visit to his hometown. But as he walked away from the festival, his mind was already wandering back to the way her eyes had softened when she smiled at Emmy, the subtle strength in her presence, the years of what-ifs hanging between them. Sometimes, he realized, the best architectural plans were the ones life drew up without consulting you first. That night, long after Julia had tucked her into bed, Emmy lay awake, her mind replaying the day's events. Her stuffed bear, Mr. Whiskers, sat propped against her pillow as she scribbled in her secret notebook by flashlight. The pink pages were filled with her careful 8-year-old handwriting and elaborate doodles. "Make Mommy smile again," she wrote at the top of a fresh page, underlining it twice for importance. Emmy might have been young, but she noticed things. She noticed how her mom's smile sometimes didn't reach her eyes when looking through old photo albums. How she would turn off romantic movies halfway through, claiming she was tired. How she always said she was too busy for dating whenever Aunt Sarah tried to set her up with someone. But today had been different. When Mr. Nathan appeared, Emmy had seen something flash across her mother's face, like when the sun breaks through clouds after rain. And more importantly, she'd seen how gentle and kind Mr. Nathan was, how he made her feel safe when she was lost and scared. "Step 1, Emmy wrote, drawing little stars around the words, "Birthday party plan." The next morning over breakfast, Emmy launched her campaign with innocent precision. "Mommy, can I invite Mr. Nathan to my birthday party next week? He helped me when I was lost, and you said we should always thank people who help us." Julia nearly choked on her coffee. "Sweetheart, I'm sure Nathan is very busy with his work." "Please?" Emmy deployed her best puppy dog eyes, the ones that usually earned her an extra cookie. "He's nice, and he makes you smile different." Julia's cheeks flushed pink. "What do you mean different?" like in the pictures from before I was born, the real kind of smile. Julia fell silent, stirring her coffee longer than necessary. Finally, she sighed. If you want to invite him, you can. But don't be disappointed if he can't come, okay? Emmy hid her triumphant grin behind her cereal bowl. Later that day, while Julia worked at the bakery, Emmy enlisted Aunt Sarah's help to create a special invitation. They used glitter, perhaps too much, and Emmy's best handwriting. She drew little architectural tools around the border, remembering how her mom had mentioned Nathan was an architect. When the invitation arrived at Nathan's temporary office in town, he stood staring at it for a long moment, touched by the childish artistry and the memory of Emmy's trusting hand in his. But it was the small note at the bottom that made his heart skip. P.S. Mommy says it's okay. The birthday party transformed the local kids' gym into a wonderland of balloons and streamers. Julia was in full party planning mode, arranging cupcakes and organizing games when Nathan walked in, gift bag in hand. He'd changed from his usual business attire into casual jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out the warmth in his eyes. Emmy invited me, he explained, holding up the glitter-covered invitation like a peace offering. I hope that's okay? Before Julia could respond, Emmy launched herself at Nathan with a delighted squeal. You came. Do you want to help with the balloon animals? Mommy's terrible at them. Hey, Julia protested, laughing despite herself. Throughout the party, Julia found her eyes drawn to Nathan again and again. He threw himself into every activity with unexpected enthusiasm, helping smaller kids with crafts, joining in silly games, and even volunteering as the target in a whipped cream pie contest. When Emmy's face fell because her balloon dog looked more like a blob, Nathan spent 10 minutes teaching her the proper twisting technique, his large hands gentle as they guided her smaller ones. It was so different from the ambitious young man who had once been too focused on his career to attend his own cousin's wedding. This Nathan was present, patient, and somehow both softer and stronger than the boy she'd known. The coincidences continued. Emmy developed a sudden passionate interest in architecture just before her school's science fair, leading to Nathan spending several evenings at their kitchen table, helping her design and build a bridge model. Each visit seemed to chip away at the careful walls Julia had built around her heart. One evening, as Nathan explained load-bearing principles to an enraptured Emmy, Julia found herself leaning against the doorframe, watching them. Nathan had rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms dusted with light hair. A smudge of glue marked his cheek, and his usually perfect hair was slightly mussed. He looked real, touchable, dangerous to her peace of mind. As if sensing her thoughts, Nathan looked up, catching her eye. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words, until Emmy accidentally knocked over the glass of water, breaking the spell. Then came the school concert. Julia saved seats as usual, expecting her sister Sarah to join her. Instead, Nathan appeared just as the lights dimmed, sliding into the empty seat beside her. Their arms brushed on the shared armrest, sending tingles up Julia's spine. Emmy sent me a ticket, he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. On stage, Emmy sang her solo with perfect pitch, her eyes twinkling as she spotted them sitting together. Julia felt tears well up. Proud mom tears, she told herself. Nothing to do with the way Nathan's pinky finger had somehow ended up linked with hers in the darkness. The coincidences began to pile up. Emmy's wobbly desk needed fixing. The kitchen sink developed a mysterious leak. Each time, Emmy insisted they needed an architect's expertise, and each time, Nathan appeared, toolkit in hand, sleeves rolled up, looking far too attractive for Julia's peace of mind. During one such repair session, Julia reached past Nathan for the sugar container, their bodies pressing together in the narrow kitchen space. Time seemed to slow, the air growing thick with tension. Julia could feel the solid warmth of his chest against her back, smell the subtle notes of his cologne mixed with coffee and sawdust. "Julia?" Nathan murmured, his voice rough with emotion. She turned slowly, finding herself trapped between the counter and his body. His eyes were dark with something that made her heart race, and for a moment, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "I should check on Emmy's desk. Make sure the repairs are holding." Julia watched him go, her hands gripping the counter behind her, wondering when exactly she'd lost control of the situation. This wasn't part of her carefully planned life. She wasn't supposed to feel this flutter in her stomach when Nathan smiled, wasn't supposed to catch herself imagining how his strong hands would feel cupping her face, wasn't supposed to dream about second chances. But as she watched through the window while Nathan and Emmy played catch in the backyard, their laughter floating through the open window, Julia realized that sometimes the best parts of life were the unplanned ones. The ones that snuck up on you when you weren't looking, wrapped in glitter-covered invitations and warm honey eyes that still looked at you like you were magic. Maybe, just maybe, her daughter's coincidences were the universe's way of saying some stories deserve a second chapter. The evening after another of Emmy's emergency repair sessions, Julia found herself unable to usher Nathan out the door as quickly as usual. Emmy had already gone to bed, leaving them alone in the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee and years of unspoken words between them. "You still take it black with 1 sugar," Julia observed, sliding his mug across the counter. She'd made it automatically, muscle memory from a lifetime ago. Nathan's fingers brushed hers as he accepted the cup, sending a familiar spark through her skin. "You remember." "Some things stick with you," she replied softly, looking down at her own coffee. "Cream and honey, just like always." Just like the countless cups they'd shared in college, planning their future over textbooks and dreams. The kitchen clock ticked steadily in the comfortable silence that followed. Through the window, moonlight painted silver patterns on the worn wooden table, the same table where they'd once spread out architectural drawings of their imagined bakery, where Nathan had sketched their dream house on napkins, where now their coffee cups made perfect rings on the surface. "I saw it, you know," Nathan said suddenly, his voice quiet but clear. "Your bakery in San Francisco, Sweet Dreams Bakery. I was there for a project last year." Julia's hand stilled on her mug. "You never came in." "I wanted to." His admission hung in the air between them. "I stood outside for 20 minutes, watching you through the window. You were teaching some kids how to pipe frosting roses. You looked happy." "I was. I am." Julia traced the rim of her cup. It took a long time to get there. The unspoken weight of their history pressed against her chest. 12 years ago, Nathan had chosen a prestigious internship in New York over their shared dreams in California. Julia had been left holding their plans like scattered puzzle pieces that no longer fit together. "I'm sorry," Nathan said, the words seemingly torn from somewhere deep inside him. "I was young and stupid and scared. I thought success meant climbing corporate ladders and designing skyscrapers. I didn't understand that the biggest things in life are actually the smallest moments." Julia looked up, meeting his gaze. The boy who had chased ambition was gone, replaced by a man who carried both strength and gentleness in his eyes. "What changed?" "Everything," he smiled ruefully. "Nothing. I built those skyscrapers, won those awards. But every time I achieved something, I found myself turning to share it with someone who wasn't there." Their conversation flowed easier after that, memories rising to the surface like old friends coming home. They talked about college pranks, shared friends, the time they got lost hiking, and ended up having a picnic in the rain. But they also shared newer stories, Julia's struggles and triumphs as a single mother, Nathan's gradual realization that success without connection was hollow. These late-night conversations became a quiet ritual. After Emmy's bedtime, they'd find themselves lingering over coffee or tea, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing in comfortable silence. Nathan would help clean up from dinner, his movements in sync with Julia's, as if they'd been sharing a kitchen for years instead of weeks. Small gestures began to accumulate like gentle snowfall. Nathan started bringing Julia's favorite artisanal coffee beans from the specialty shop across town. Julia found herself packing extra muffins, blueberry with streusel topping, the way he'd always loved them, when she knew he had early meetings. One rainy Sunday, Nathan arrived with a box of old board games and hot chocolate supplies, remembering Emmy's disappointment about her canceled outdoor plans. The three of them spent the afternoon building blanket forts and playing Monopoly, Emmy's giggles filling the house as Nathan did ridiculous voices for each of his properties. Julia watched them, something warm and dangerous blooming in her chest. Nathan was teaching Emmy about mortgages and investments, making it into a game she could understand, showing the same patience he'd once shown while teaching Julia about load-bearing walls and structural integrity. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Sometimes, when Nathan's hand would linger too long on her lower back, or when their eyes would meet across a room with too much understanding, Julia would feel panic rise in her throat. The walls she'd built to protect herself and Emmy would seem suddenly too thin, too fragile. "I can't mess this up," she confessed to her sister Sarah during one of their weekly coffee dates. "Emmy adores him. If it doesn't work out." "And if it does?" Sarah challenged gently. "Julia, I've seen the way he looks at you, like you're something precious, he lost and found again. And more importantly, I've seen the way he looks at Emmy, like she's already his to protect and cherish." The truth was, Nathan had become woven into their lives so naturally, it was hard to remember what it was like before. He was there for Emmy's nightmares and triumphs, for Julia's busy bakery days and quiet evening doubts. He brought stability and laughter, fixed broken things with careful hands, and looked at them both like they were miracles he didn't deserve. One evening, after helping Emmy with her homework, Nathan was preparing to leave when a thunderstorm broke overhead. Emmy, who had always been scared of storms, came running downstairs in her pajamas. "Can Mr. Nathan stay?" she asked, eyes wide as lightning flashed. "He makes everything feel safe." Julia met Nathan's gaze over Emmy's head, seeing her own emotions reflected in his eyes: love, fear, hope, the desperate desire to not mess this up. "Of course he can stay," Julia found herself saying. "We'll make hot chocolate and tell stories until the storm passes." They ended up on the couch, Emmy between them, wrapped in blankets as Nathan told elaborate tales about brave architects who built houses strong enough to withstand any storm. Emmy fell asleep there, her head on Nathan's lap, one hand clutching Julia's sleeve. In the soft lamplight, with rain drumming against the windows, Julia looked at Nathan, really looked at him. At the gentle way he stroked Emmy's hair, the confident set of his shoulders that now carried responsibility instead of just ambition, the smile lines around his eyes that spoke of joy found and wisdom earned. "What?" he asked softly, catching her stare. "You're different," she whispered, "but somehow exactly the same." Nathan's free hand found hers in the darkness, their fingers intertwining naturally. Maybe we needed those 12 years. Maybe we had to become these versions of ourselves to get it right this time. Julia squeezed his hand, feeling her carefully constructed walls continue to crumble. But for the first time in years, the falling barriers didn't feel like danger. They felt like freedom. The air was thick with anticipation the day of Emmy's art exhibit at school. Julia stood in front of the large white canvas, her heart pounding. The gymnasium had been transformed into a gallery, bright lights illuminating colorful creations that filled the space with childlike wonder. Each piece told a story, but none more so than Emmy's. Julia glanced at Nathan, who stood beside her, his presence a steadying force. They exchanged a look, a silent conversation that spoke of shared hopes and fears. Since that rainy night together, they had grown closer, but Julia's heart still carried the weight of uncertainty. "Are you ready?" Nathan asked, his voice low and soothing. "As ready as I'll ever be," Julia replied, forcing a smile. She couldn't shake the feeling that this event would reveal more than just Emmy's artistic talent. It would also bring out the truths she had been avoiding. The moment arrived when Emmy bounded into the gym, her blue dress swirling around her like a burst of color. "Mommy, Mr. Nathan, look at my display," she squealed, pulling them toward a large poster board featuring her artwork. Julia's breath caught in her throat. Amidst drawings of flowers, stars, and whimsical creatures, one piece stood out, a crayon drawing of her, Nathan, and Emmy standing hand in hand under a large, crayon-drawn house. The caption read, "Home isn't a place, it's people who love you." Tears stung Julia's eyes as she knelt beside her daughter. "Emmy, this is beautiful," she choked out, pulling her daughter into a tight embrace. "You captured everything perfectly." Emmy beamed, her smile brightening the room. "I wanted everyone to see how happy we are together." Julia's heart swelled, but a pang of fear twisted in her gut. What if this was all just a dream? What if Nathan didn't feel the same way? As if sensing her distress, Nathan knelt beside them, placing a comforting hand on Julia's back. "You've created something amazing, Emmy," he said, his voice warm. "This is what home feels like." Emmy grinned wider, bouncing on her toes. "Can we take a picture? I want to remember this forever." They posed in front of the artwork, Nathan's arm around Julia's shoulders, Emmy nestled between them. Julia's heart raced, the warmth of Nathan's touch igniting a familiar spark. They smiled, but underneath the surface, emotions churned. After the photo, Emmy darted off to show her friends, leaving Julia and Nathan standing amidst the crowded gymnasium. The laughter and chatter faded into the background as Julia turned to face him. The moment felt monumental, charged with unspoken words. "Nathan," she began, her voice trembling. Before she could finish, Nathan stepped closer, his expression serious. "Julia, we need to talk about what Emmy just created. This isn't just a drawing, it's a dejuliation. She sees something in us that I'm terrified to acknowledge." Julia's heart raced. "I know, but what if it doesn't work out? What if I ruin everything for her?" "You're not going to ruin anything," Nathan said, his voice firm yet gentle. "You've built a life for Emmy that is full of love and stability. But you can't let fear hold you back from what could be an incredible future." Julia felt a swell of emotion. "I want to believe that, but I'm scared. I've been alone for so long, and I've never wanted to put Emmy through the pain of loss again." Nathan stepped even closer, their faces inches apart. "I'm scared too. Scared of hurting you both. Scared of losing what we've built. But Julia, I love Emmy. I love you. And I want to be part of your lives, if you'll let me." The sincerity in his eyes made Julia's heart flutter. "You're really ready for that?" "I've never been more sure of anything," Nathan replied, his voice thick with emotion. Tears spilled down Julia's cheeks as she took a shaky breath. "I've been so focused on protecting Emmy, on not letting anyone in, that I've forgotten how to hope. The last time I let someone in, I lost everything." Nathan reached out, brushing his thumb gently across her cheek. "You won't lose me, Julia. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. We can do this together." "Together?" Julia echoed, the word tasting foreign yet sweet on her tongue. "Yes, we can build something beautiful. A family, if that's what you want." His dejuliation hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Julia felt the walls she had built begin to crumble, the fear slowly giving way to something brighter. "I want that," she whispered. "But what if we fail?" Nathan's gaze softened. "Then we'll figure it out together. We'll learn and grow, just like we did when we were much younger. We can't let fear dictate our future." As the weight of his words settled in, Julia felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. "You're right. It's time to stop being afraid." Just then, Emmy returned, tugging at Nathan's sleeve. "Mr. Nathan, come see my friend's art." As they moved through the gym, Julia felt the warm glow of possibility enveloping her. She caught Nathan's eye across the bustling crowd, and for a moment, everything else faded away. After the exhibit, they found themselves outside under a star-studded sky. The crisp night air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and the moon cast a soft glow over everything. Emmy had run ahead to play with her friends, leaving Julia and Nathan alone in the serenity of the evening. "I've never been good at this," Nathan admitted, his voice low as they walked side by side. "Being vulnerable. But with you and Emmy, it feels different. It feels right." Julia nodded, feeling the truth in his words. "I know what you mean. I've spent years building walls, afraid to let anyone in. But now, I feel like I'm ready to let you in." Nathan stopped and turned to face her, his expression earnest. "I want to be in your lives, Julia. I want to be part of the family Emmy's envisioning." The honesty in his eyes sent a thrill through Julia. "And I want that too. I want to create a home filled with love, with all of us together." Under the stars, they stood close, the world around them fading away. Nathan reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers, sending a rush of warmth through Julia's body. The connection felt electric, as if the universe was conspiring to bring them back together. "Julia," he said softly, his gaze searching hers. "I love you. I never stopped loving you." Her heart soared at his words. "I love you too, Nathan. I've always loved you. Even when I thought I had moved on, a part of me was still holding on to what we had." Nathan stepped closer, his breath mingling with hers. "Then let's not waste any more time. Let's build our future together, one step at a time." Their lips met in a tentative kiss, soft and searching, filled with the promise of new beginnings. Julia melted into him, the kiss deepening as they both surrendered to the connection that had drawn them together again. As they pulled away, Julia's heart raced. She could see a future with Nathan, one filled with laughter, love, and the gentle chaos that came with family life. The fear that had once gripped her began to dissolve, replaced by hope and excitement. Just then, Emmy came running back, her face lit up with joy. "Did you see my painting? Can we go home now? I want to tell Mr. Whiskers about my art." Julia laughed, pulling Emmy into her arms. "Yes, sweetheart, let's go home." Nathan took Julia's other hand, and together they walked toward the car, a small family unit formed under the stars. Julia felt the warmth of Nathan's presence beside her, a newfound certainty filling her heart. As they drove home, Emmy chattered excitedly about her artwork, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Julia exchanged glances with Nathan, both of them silently acknowledging the bond they were forming. "Do you think Mr. Whiskers will be proud?" Emmy asked, her voice filled with innocence. "Absolutely," Nathan replied, grinning. "I'm sure he'll want to hear all about it." Julia couldn't help but smile at the sight of Nathan engaging so effortlessly with her daughter. In that moment, she knew that they were on the right path. When they arrived home, Emmy raced ahead to the living room, her laughter echoing through the house. Julia and Nathan followed, exchanging a look filled with promise and understanding. "We did it," Nathan said softly, his eyes sparkling with hope. "Yes, we did," Julia agreed, feeling a warmth spreading through her chest. Together. As they settled in for the night, Julia realized that the home they were building was not just a physical place, but a collection of moments, laughter, and love. With Nathan by her side, she felt ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing they would face it together. Emmy snuggled between them on the couch, clutching Mr. Whiskers tightly as they watched a movie. Julia rested her head on Nathan's shoulder, feeling an overwhelming sense of belonging. The night wrapped around them like a cozy blanket, the stars outside winking down like old friends. In that moment, Julia understood that true happiness comes from opening your heart to love, even when the past casts long shadows. With Nathan and Emmy, she was ready to embrace the light and build a future filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. As the credits rolled, Julia whispered, "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" Nathan squeezed her hand gently. "More than okay, we're going to be great." And as they sat together, a new family forged in love, Julia knew that they had all the time in the world to make their dreams come true.